So you've decided to go on a solo trip, but you aren't sure where to begin planning one. I get it, I was there once. Today I'm going to be walking you guys through the entire process of how I plan a solo trip, everything from choosing the destination to creating an itinerary. I began solo traveling at the beginning of 2018, and since then I've planned solo journeys around the world, and today I'm going to share with you guys how I do. Okay, so step one for me when planning a solo trip is to create a list of possible destinations. I like to have a few different options in mind, and I have a reason for this, and I'll touch on it in just a minute. So when I was planning my first solo trip, I was a little bit intimidated when choosing a destination because I wanted to go somewhere safe. So I just turned to Google and searched top destinations for solo female travelers. And I started reading lists of recommendations. And as I went through all of the lists, I started making my own list of places that I was seeing that interested me. And then the second thing I do when planning a solo trip is I research the best times of the year to visit those destinations. So usually the biggest factor there is weather. I figure out when the best season to visit is or what the different seasons offer. And then within my Word document where I have my list going, I make a note next to each destination. And I like to note when the best season is, but I also like to note when the shoulder season is, because the best season is usually high tourist season, which means that things are going to be more crowded, hotels are going to be more expensive. So if I find that a destination is best to visit between June and September, I will make a note that maybe like mid to late May or early October could also be a good time to go and probably cheaper. Step 3 is to check flight and hotel prices for each of those destinations at the time that I'm wanting to visit. Something to keep in mind here is sometimes flights can be really cheap, but hotels can be really expensive at the destination, or flights can be really expensive and hotels can be really cheap at a destination. So I start looking at flight and hotel prices, and I like to start watching flight prices for all of these destinations. Like I'll have 3 or 4 different destinations, and for just a month or two, I'll start watching prices and I'll start figuring out what's like a normal price to fly to these destinations, what's a high price, what's a low price. And without fail, if you watch 3 or 4 different destinations for even just a month, at some point, one of those destinations is going to have a couple of days where flight prices plummet on some airline. Some deal's going to come up that you're going to be able to snag, and that's usually what decides what my destination will be. The next thing to do is to make sure that you don't need a special visa to enter the country, that there isn't something that you need to apply for and be approved for. And then if you're good, book your flights. And as soon as I've booked my flights, the very next thing that I do is buy travel insurance. And this is something that I used to never do. I didn't see the value in it, and now I always buy it because it just has so many benefits. If your flight is canceled or your luggage is lost, or if you get really ill like a few days before your trip, you can get reimbursement for what you've paid for your trip. The next thing you need to do is not book your hotel. Actually, I leave that for later. The next thing that I do is create my itinerary. So you first need to consider how many days you're going to be at your destination, which will be determined by your flight dates. Now, depending on your flexibility, you might want to do this backwards, like create your itinerary first and then book your flights. If you are flexible on the number of days you can be somewhere, but I'm running through this as if you have X number of days off and you want to go on a trip for X number of days, and that's kind of a fixed number for you. But if you are flexible and you could take a week or a week and a half or 3 days or 5 days, then maybe create your itinerary and figure out what you want to do most first and then book a flight that gives you that many days. To create my itinerary, I really just browse all over the internet. I go on TripAdvisor and look at top rated things to do in a destination. I go on Instagram and I look at geotagged places in a destination. I look at Airbnb experiences. There are so many cool Airbnb experiences now all over the globe that are also really affordable in a lot of destinations. I look for blog posts about the destination I'm going to. Once my itinerary is complete, then I start looking at hotels. And I like to wait to book my hotel until after I plan my itinerary, because I look at the things that I'm doing, and if there's several things in a certain area of the city, then I know that that's going to be a really convenient area for me to stay in. Also, when I'm choosing where to stay when I'm traveling by myself, I personally prefer to stay in busier areas of the city, like near busier streets. And that's because at night, I personally feel safer walking in a buzzing, kind of well-lit area where there's people all over the sidewalk and like I'm not all by myself. Okay, so once I have my hotel booked, then I start thinking about transportation. And this is everything, including how am I going to get from the airport to my hotel? Is there public transportation in the city? Is that safe to take? Is there Uber? Do I need to buy any kind of a rail pass? Is it more convenient to rent a car? Then next I create my packing list. Packing list, I first look at the weather for the time that I'm visiting and figure out what types of clothing I'll need to pack. Other things I consider when making a packing list are if I'm going to need any special plugs or converters for my electronics. Then the next really important thing that you want to figure out is how you are going to have Wi-Fi. I do think when traveling by yourself, it's a really smart idea to have a fully charged, fully usable, smart connection device on you. This is so you can access mapping services. Like if you get lost walking around a city, you can use Google Maps to figure out where you want to go. And there are a few different ways that you can stay connected. One is you can buy a local SIM card once you arrive at your destination. Another is you can buy one of those portable Wi-Fi hotspots made for travel. And then have fun. You are off on your solo trip. If it's your first one, you are in for an experience. It's definitely a little bit daunting and it could be maybe a little bit lonely at times, but it's going to be a learning experience and it's going to be something that's entirely unique. It is so like confidence boosting and empowering. I really hope that this video has been helpful or inspiring for somebody who has been thinking about planning a solo trip but just hasn't really been sure how to put the idea into action.